Smuggling.
Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is already the 2nd of October 2019, and tonight's topic, somewhat breaking news: precious metal spoofing CFTC orders Morgan Stanley, Mitsubishi, and Belvedere to pay more than $3 in fines. Now, we are going to cover tonight Russia's gold purchases and Russian gold mining numbers. We'll get to those, and also some comments by Putin on the dollar. But there were a couple of other pieces of breaking news also, in addition to this latest spoofing case being brought by the CFTC. The U.S. is now going to be slapping tariffs, up to 25% tariffs after a World Trade Organization win on a lot of European goods. So this broadens the trade war. Let's cover that quickly. Do probably more on that tomorrow, and then we'll get into the CFTC orders on Morgan Stanley and these other banks for precious metal spoofing violations. So here's what's going to be up for the tariffs. Single malt scotch from England, sweaters from England. These could be up to 25% tariffs. A bunch of girls' anoraks, windbreakers, and so on. Now, also men's suits, wool suits. So England does import or export a lot of fine linens, fine suits, fine sweaters to the U.S. and, of course, whiskey. Germany, 25% tariffs on coffee, instant coffee, roasted coffee. Germany also makes a lot of tools, axes, bill hooks, similar hewing tools, metal cutting shears and similar tools, pipe cutters, screwdrivers, and so on, knives. These will all have a 25% tariff. Let's move on and see what other countries we have in the tariff list. This country looks like it's hard to pull this one down. They've got sweet biscuits, waffles, and wafers. This is Germany and England. Waffles, biscuits, books, lithographs, and so on. So there is more, 25%. Now, Germany, England, and Spain. Frozen meat, swine, whey protein, concentrates, cheese. Lots of different types of cheese, including Edam, Gouda cheese, sheep's milk cheese, virgin olive oil, other olive oil, olives. And that comes from, they say, Germany, England, and Spain. Although they don't make Gouda and Edam are cheeses that are from Holland or the Netherlands. That's what they list there. Now, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Spain, or the United Kingdom, 25% tariff on liquors and cordials. Germany, France, Spain, United Kingdom, olives again, and wine, other than Tokay. Now, I happen to know what Tokay is. Tokay is Hungarian wine. I don't know why that would be exempted, but maybe because it's Hungarian. I don't know, maybe it finds its way from Hungary into those countries. France, Germany, Spain, United Kingdom. Now, more products of, this is a big list: Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, and United Kingdom. 25% for all cheeses and substitutes for cheese with cow's milk and so on. Just had myself some Greek cheese. I probably won't be buying that in the coming weeks if we have a 25% tariff. Americans out in Wisconsin do make Greek-style cheeses. They make Italian-style cheeses in the United States. They can't call it Parmesan. They can't call it because it has to come from Parmesan. You can make mozzarella. There is in the United States mozzarella di bufalo. They actually have a herd out in California. There's feta cheese they make in Wisconsin. So there, you can get many of these types of cheeses in the United States. But again, they're different. They're not the same as the ones that are made overseas. And a Swiss cheese, obviously, is included separately. A whole list of countries, again, pork and other ham. But again, there's pork and ham in the United States. Yogurt, same thing. I mean, they do. I've had Bulgarian yogurt here, Greek-style yogurt, but that'll be, butter is also included. Just about all the food products coming out of the EU will have cherries, peaches, cherry juice. Again, you can get these things in the United States, but they will now be much more expensive to buy if you're buying them at the European imports. There's tons. Let's see what else we have here. Lots of cheeses. There's tons of lists of cheeses. Pear juice, prune juice. I don't know why you would need to get that from Europe, but we do import that. More cheeses. The list goes on and on. I think we've exhausted it. I mean, it just keeps going on, listing all the different types of cheeses: lemons, clams, razors, clams, mussels, and so on. All right, let's close that out. Let's get into this spoofing. This whole spoofing concept. Now, let's get one thing straight. When people say, aha, we got them now, you already had the JP Morgan spoofing case, the Department of Justice has already nailed a few traders, and now, breaking today, the U.S. Commodities Futures Trading Commission has announced that they have ordered a number of companies to pay fines for doing the same thing, spoofing in the precious metals market. Let's pull up the stories there. But the problem with spoofing, it means manipulation of price in order to make a profit. It doesn't mean suppression of price. So just because they catch these people doing this kind of stuff doesn't mean it's going to stop. It just means they'll be more clever, or they'll be more transparent or less transparent about doing the spoofing. And, here's the DOJ spoofing right here. First of all, we had this one. This was back in November. Former precious metals trader at a United States bank. They never mentioned JP Morgan. It's funny. There's this one. That was the Department of Justice. There was another one at the Department of Justice just this past August. Former precious metals trader at the London, Singapore, New York offices of a New York bank. It doesn't have a U.S. bank. Doesn't say, but they pleaded guilty to conspiracy and spoofing charges. That's Department of Justice. And of course, then you go over to today's news, spoofing at the CFTC. This one talks about the CFTC announces civil enforcement action. Remember, this is not criminal, against 2 trading firms and 1 bank, and that is the Morgan Stanley, the Mitsubishi, and the Belvedere trading outfits. Same thing. They get to pay $3 million for spoofing. I mean, $3 million for 3 banks, and one of them I think is $600,000. The other one pays $1 million. They're minor amounts. They pay them. They move on with it. Maybe they fire the employees. But again, as I mentioned, this does not mean this is it. Now it's out in the open. Everyone knows that the precious metals market's manipulated. It's all going to stop. Because check out also what the CFTC released in the last couple of days. Press release. CFTC orders 6 financial institutions to pay more than $6 million fines. And these particular fines were not for the precious metals, for reporting failure. So they just don't supervise, and they don't tell people what they're doing, what they're supposed to be doing. And when you don't report, you can get away with all types of shenanigans. What else did they have? CFTC orders 2 trading firms to pay a total of $3 million for spoofing. That's the one we just read. And there was one more here in the latest news. Here it is. CFTC orders interdealer brokers to pay $25 million for fraud in the Forex open markets. So these things are commonplace. It's not just the precious metals. We did a whole show on this a while back. There are so many markets, and every last one of them has a level of manipulation, has the CFTC on them, fining them, investigating them, Department of Justice. It's not just precious metals. The real issue with precious metals is someone, something, some entity purposely suppressing the price of silver or gold? Not is somebody shaving points and making some money off of manipulating the markets, because that's no secret. That's been going on for years in every single market. And I don't expect that to stop anytime soon. But I did want to bring it to everyone's attention because it's yet another case. You had the Department of Justice and JP Morgan, and now you've got the CFTC fining Morgan Stanley, Mitsubishi, and Belvedere. I mean, the list goes on. It's not just JP Morgan. They're all have the potential to have traders who, when there's value, people are going to try to steal it. And That's what spoofing is. You pretend you're going to make an order. I got it. I ain't got it. And then everybody's already moved on the fact that you were going to go long, and then you didn't go long, but everyone went long. And then when people realize you're not long, the price goes down, and they're making money on both sides of the spoof. And then they spoof that they're going short. And it's kind of hard to detect, because how do you know if somebody just decides they don't want to buy, or they're going to change their buying habits or their selling habits? And one of the problems is that, especially when you're trying to prove that people are dumping short contracts on the market, you say, well, no one would do that. That's stupid. It's Stupidity is not criminal. And unfortunately, you could say what one can make the inference that if somebody is selling all those contracts, quote, in the middle of the night when there's nobody around, they're going to get the worst price. Okay. So they're morons. That's all you can prove from that. You cannot criminalize bad trading, criminality. There's a thing called the business judgment rule. Judges will not second guess the decisions that business owners or business participants, market participants make. I had firsthand knowledge with this. I remember I was working on a case, and it was a merger, and I was representing a very large company, and at the last minute, some other company, they had worked out a merger over the course of 2 years, and some other large company came in and said, okay, we'll bid 20% higher than the merger cost. And they said no. And then they said, well, are you crazy? How about we raise it to 30%? And the company said, no, we're not going to take the extra money. So the company that wanted to buy the company at the 30% premium went to court and said, hey, this is ridiculous. This is a breach of the duty of the owners of the company. They won't take our money. They're going to be stuck with this other merger partner for 30% less. So we ask you, court, talk some sense into them. This is, make sure that they take more money. And court looked at it, and the other side as a defense, all they did was they showed, it must have been 150, 300 pages of minutes of the two companies talking to each other about why the merger would make sense. And the court said, okay, you want to pay 30% more? These two companies, they don't know who you are. They've been working with each other for 2 years. Go take your money and go pound sand. And that was the end of it. Now, that merged entity never gained 30% in share price for 10 years. So it was a big failure, that merger. And doesn't matter. The courts just, if you can't prove that they're doing something wrong, and the reason that merger was allowed to go through is they said companies, they're not going to second guess business judgment as long as it looks like business judgment was executed. And they sat around and they discussed it for 2 years. They were wrong. They should have taken the 30% premium from the third party, but they didn't. So the point is that it's very hard to end manipulation that is what we would call price suppression. You can catch people manipulating, but in order to catch them suppressing the market on purpose, you have to prove that's what they intended to do, not that they're just morons and they're throwing money away. There has to be a memo, and there's not going to be one, that this is what they're doing. Now, the spoofing, the reason you catch them, like when we had those cases, I think it was a couple of years ago, they actually had the emails and the chats. It's because they're not part of a grand conspiracy. They're just, again, they're rogue traders. It's like, watch this. We're going to crash the silver market. 1, 2, 3, boom. And they do it. They're just sloppy. But that's not part of a grand conspiracy, I don't think, to suppress the price of silver. That's part of a conspiracy to rig the markets. And again, there's a difference between rigging markets for profit and rigging markets for price suppression. I think the price suppression is much harder to prove, and there's instances where there has been price suppression where they've done it on purpose, like when the United States set the price of gold in 1934 at $35 an ounce, or when the London Gold Pool specifically tried to keep the price, the 1934 price at $35 an ounce in the late 60s. So there are cases where official entities try to suppress the price. I mean, the Fed does it. They try to keep interest rates at 2%. That's what they're doing in the repo market right now. That's why they're in the market. They're trying to keep the interest rates down. All right, so what happened in the gold market today? Well, it was very interesting because yesterday there was a slew of slow news on the PMI in many countries, including the United States. And also today they had the ADP employment number was lower than expected. What does this mean? It means they're already in the world on recession alert. All the central banks already, like the ECB, are doing QE. They're lowering interest rates, already in negative territory. Japan the same, China the same. The United States has now made 2 rate cuts. They're talking about what assets they might buy in the next recession. Well, I mean, this is bound to drive the price of gold and silver and potentially cryptocurrencies higher. And here you see gold regaining that very close to 1,500. Even right now in the aftermarket, it's just at 1499.50. It's very encouraging that it's sticking around the 1,500 mark. As I mentioned, the longer it stays there, builds a base, it'll probably at some point then shoot to 16, and that'll put silver on track, I would expect. Again, not investment advice, just my predictions that I made at the beginning of the year. That should put silver on track to get to $20, $21, $22. And indeed, today, we see what you like to see, which is gold goes up, but silver goes up more. And that will happen in a bull market, not just on a given day. And when gold goes down, silver will go down more. But here you see silver up a bit more, about 1.87%, up 32 cents. Still way below that. I mean, we're down $2 from the 1950 mark we were at just a few weeks ago. Lost 2 full dollars. Almost we're down below 17 again. It looks like we're stabilizing here. Now, with this trade war expanding to Europe, there's bound to be some economic slowdown. Now, maybe in the end it'll all work out, and that's what people are saying, is that if the United States and China work out their deal, then we'll see a resumption of the march higher in the stock market and so on. Well, now you've got the European problem, so maybe that narrative might be dried up, and it might not even happen that the U.S. and China may figure out their issues. So we now have 2 trade wars going on with the 2 largest trading partners, the EU and China. All right, now we've cleared the deck. This is what I was going to talk about tonight, was the Russian gold reserves, the Russian gold mining production, and what's happening there. All right, so let's just briefly review where the Russian gold is. The reason we talk about the Russian gold is because they are by far the largest gold buying nation in the world. They are the 3rd largest gold producer. And we've shown over time, right now, that Russia is the 5th largest at 2,230 tons. These are central bank numbers. These are not the amount of gold that's in any particular country. That's just the amount of gold that's in the central bank of all the countries, other than the United States, where the gold is not held by the central bank. The gold is held by the U.S. Treasury in various locations across the United States, including Fort Knox being the largest, under 5,000 tons. But here you see these are the central bank holdings, and Russian central bank is the 5th largest at 2,230 tons, and probably will pass France and Italy in the next year and a half, 2 years, because those countries are not adding gold, and they're probably, it's iffy if they're even allowed to add gold. They have to check with the ECB. And the last we heard, Italy wanted to sell some of its gold, so it's not really looking to add gold. I don't think France is either. Germany sells 4 to 5 tons a year to its own government so they can mint gold coins, so they're probably not going to be adding. The United States hasn't given any indication that they're going to add any, and China will probably add. They'll get over 2,000 tons in the next 6 to 8 months. Switzerland sold 1,000 tons. They're probably not adding any. Can't really say Japan will add any. India has been adding. They're at 620. Netherlands is repatriated, but they haven't been adding any. Taiwan, Portugal have been the same for decades. Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, they're moving up. Saudi Arabia probably will add a little bit. As I mentioned in prior podcasts, I think Saudi Arabia, the individuals, the people with all the money, the oligarchs, whatever you want to call them in Saudi Arabia, individually probably have a lot of gold, but the central bank probably doesn't look to increase much of it. They just buy treasuries. United Kingdom, 310. They sold a lot of their gold, more than half of it, just 20 years ago. Lebanon is a big story, 287 tons. I don't know why they have that much gold. And Spain is 282 tons. Austria, none of those countries have been adding gold. Turkey adds a lot, but they buy and sell a lot. They've got a lot of financial instability there, so they use their gold sometimes, I think, as it should be, as an emergency fund. But there you are. Now, let's get back to Russia particularly. And we're not going to discuss again their most recent purchases. What I want to discuss now is let's compare this year to last year and what they're adding. And it is slower. This year is probably going to be the lowest year in the last 5 years for gold additions by the Russian Central Bank. So here is a bigger snapshot of what Russia's done. So you can see they've averaged over 200 tons a year since 2015 when they had 208 tons, 2016, 199, 2017, 224 tons, and then last year, 271 tons. But so far this year, they're only at 115, and that's through August. So they only have another 4 months to go. They're probably, unless they really ramp it up, they're not going to get past 200 tons this year. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is we already covered this a couple of days ago. I think we covered this on Sunday night, Solid Gold Sunday with Smaulgld, and they get the average to be about 172 if they continue at the average 14 tons a month that they've been doing. So that would be the lowest since 2014. And we covered this on Solid Gold Sunday with Smaulgld. But the reason I'm bringing it up again is it's interesting that if you look at the additions, obviously we're at a lower pace than last year. This is only through June, but they've slowed down also in July and August. The reason I've done it just for the 6-month period is because Russia just released its 6-month gold production numbers, and they are up 10% over year. Interesting that they are adding less to their reserves despite having more gold being pumped out of the ground that's oil talk when you say pumped out of the ground, pulled out of the ground in Russia. So in 2018, the first 6 months, 105 tons. 2019, the first 6 months, just 93 tons, 3 million ounces. But here's the interesting part is there was a story out saying that they're pushing 10% more gold out so far in the first 6 months. Now, if you look at the past few years, the blue line is the total amount of a gold mine. It looks like they're going to do over 300 tons this year, probably. Maybe a record year for them. And the last few years, they've been adding about 86% the last 3 years percent of their mining capacity was going into reserve. Now, this year, so far, the first 6 months, they've mined all that gold, but only 68% has gone into the reserves. So they have mined about 135 tons already, according to the story here. 135.33 tons. That's up from 122 tons. And through that time period, they only added 93 tons, which is about 69%. So they're mining more, but they're not adding more. Now that could change. We only have the first 6 months numbers. Maybe they're going to back end load their. What I suspect is happening is they did make arrangements at the beginning of this year to sell some gold to India, and maybe their gold exports to India at the end of the year may be lower, they may be higher because India has gone through a bit of a slowdown in gold imports. They have arrangements to send some of their excess gold to China. But you would imagine that if they're up 10%, that would cover the amounts that they might want to send to India or China. So I'm not quite sure what's going on. It's somewhat significant of a slowdown in gold purchases. It may have something to do with the fact that despite them adding less gold in tonnage or ounces, the value of their gold and the percentage of gold reserves has gone up as a result of the price increase. So at the end of last year, they had about 16-17% of their reserves in gold. Now it's over, I think it's 21% the last I checked. And that's because their gold used to be worth about $80 billion. Now it's worth like $110 billion. So it's gone up in value. So maybe they're thinking they don't have to add as much. I'm not sure. But it is something to keep an eye on, because if you're counting on Russia to keep 86 to 90% of its gold in its borders, then you can count on that gold not being available for the rest of the world. if you're counting on China, which is the #1 gold producer of mining 400 tons of gold a year and not shipping outside its borders, well, then you can't count on that gold. Now the third largest or the second largest is Australia, and it has to provide the rest of the world, and China buys a lot of that. So, and then if India is also buying, then you can see how you can get a pretty tight supply, and you have to rely on other areas, growth areas like Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Ghana, and other places that are actually increasing their gold mining production, because Russia and China are increasing their gold mining production, but they're keeping it either amongst themselves or just within their own borders. So you can see here, this trend line looks to be broken. Well, it's not a line yet, I didn't draw it, but so far we're at 69% through the first 6 months versus 86% of the gold mine was going to reserves at the Central Bank of the Federation of Russia. It's not going there at the same pace this year, and there's less amount of gold being added to reserves on a general basis, a nominal basis, and the gold production is higher. So don't know what it means. It could mean that just the price has risen and they're getting more satisfied with the level of their gold reserves. But also there was a story, now we'll turn it over to the comments, that Russia has been adding Chinese yuan. The yuan as a reserve currency internationally increased just a small percent, still under 2% of overall reserves. But the reason it went up from like 1.7 to 1.9% in the last 6 months is because Russia added a lot of Chinese yuan as reserves. Most countries are smart enough not to add yuan as reserves, but Russia is a major trading partner with China. And also, Russia does very little trade with the United States, doesn't have any more dollar reserves, very few dollar reserves, used to have a lot more treasuries, had about $80 to $100 billion worth of treasury, pretty much sold those down. I think they have like 8 or 9 billion. I have some dollars in reserve, but they did swap a lot of that out for Chinese yuan, and also they've been increasing the gold reserve. But there was a story out, this is just Putin, this is in Reuters, for what it's worth, a very short blurb. Putin says Washington's use of the dollar as a political tool is backfiring as more and more countries are reducing their holdings of greenback and switching to other currencies and trade contracts. Well, I'm sure Russia's probably doing that. I'm not sure with this dollar shortage that he's right, that the world is de-dollarizing at the same pace that his own country is. Then he also said the United States was rudely interfering in European affairs by objecting to the construction of the Nord Stream gas pipeline. So, yes, of course, the United States is now competing directly with Russia in the oil and gas field, and that doesn't make Russia happy, nor does the fact that there's sanctions and that the dollar is hegemonic, as they say. All right, let's see what you guys are saying in the comment section here. And if you got any questions or comments, we'll call them out. It's always good to have the crew here. It looks like we've got the normal cast of characters. Fiona's here, Pablo, Gusta Broken. All right, what are you guys saying? JB Wentworth, Smaulgld, greeting from Sarasota, Florida. Well, hello there. And Pablo from Canada, and Fiona, I believe, is from New York, and Gusta Broken, I think, is from Holland. It's all going on memory here. DB Stupid says, good afternoon, mug stackers, and don't forget the game changers. All right, Pablo says, more evidence to catch unethical behavior in the bank spoofing than to impeach Trump. No, that's true. But the pump in the media to impeach Trump, sorry to say. It was interesting today. I listened to the press con. It really is amazing that even if everything they say is true, that he got on a phone call and he talked to a foreign leader and said, hey, how about Joe Biden? He's like, okay, where's the crime? I mean, you may say you don't like it, it's unseemly. That's the worst case scenario. But to make this like they're going to impeach him, and they haven't even brought the impeachment proceedings, and then to have them just make up, I mean, what shifted was unbelievable. When you listen to what he said was that Trump said all types of stuff that he never said. Then he said, oh, it was parody. It's like, okay, but you're supposed to be taken seriously. Anyway, yeah, I think that the impeachment thing is it's parody itself. I mean, impeachment is high crimes and misdemeanors. Even when you have, look, Nixon didn't even get impeached. He resigned. Clinton was impeached, and there were actual things that he had done. There were felonies. He lost his bar license, but he still didn't get convicted in the Senate. There's no way Trump is going to get convicted in the Senate based on what they have already, or what they have. even if what they've made up wouldn't get him convicted in the Senate. So I don't even know why they're bothering. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. But it is, I would have thought, in fact, the Silver Doctors asked me this question. They haven't posted the interview yet. But they asked me, what impact will this have on the market? And I said, well, if it was real and he was going to be impeached and it was a serious threat that he would get removed from office, well, that would be tumultuous and that would lead to, a collapse in the stock market like it did during the Nixon period. There were other reasons why the stock market was going down back then. You had the oil shocks and Nixon impeachment. You had loss of confidence in the dollar due to Nixon taking the U.S. off the Bretton Woods gold standard or dollar standard in 1971. So yeah, the market went down in the early 70s during that time period. But the market went up during the Clinton impeachment period, and I think it's because you were at the height of the dot-com technology euphoria, and Clinton was in his last term anyway, and there was no real chance he was going to get convicted in the Senate, and that went nowhere, and the stock market went higher. I think in this case, I don't think it's going to happen. So you can get impeached formally. I mean, you can get the votes in the Congress just to open the inquiry. They'll open the inquiry, and it'll go nowhere. And the question is whether that inquiry will be over and voted on before the election, which would not look very good for the Democrats if he hasn't been impeached. Now he goes into the election saying that, okay, what are you running on? You ran for 4 years, and all you did was try to get rid of me. You didn't do anything to help the country, other than if you thought helping the country was getting rid of me. I mean, that's a very powerful argument, because if you're gonna take a swipe at him, you got to take him out. I mean, you can't just complain about it. I think Nancy Pelosi said, well, it's worth it even if we lose the House to impeach him. I'm like, why? If he's so horrible and you wouldn't lose the House if you impeached him, you would win, because you'd prove that he is everything you say he is and needs to be removed. So I don't understand. They're almost admitting that he hasn't done anything that rises to the level of impeachment of a crime. They just don't like him, and they don't like him so much that they would like to shoot themselves in the foot to try to get rid of him, even if it's unsuccessful. I don't know. So the long and short of it is, I don't think it's going to have any impact on the market. The things that are going to have impacts on the market are these tariffs, are the unemployment numbers, is the potential slowdown of the global and the U.S. economy, of modern monetary theory, of negative interest rates, negative yielding debt. I mean, these are the things that are going to impact the gold and silver prices, the economy. I don't think the presidential politics or impeachment politics are going to have anything to do with it. Marginally. Maybe on a day-to-day basis, or if something spectacular comes out. All right. Now, what other comments do we got? Philip Quinn, rumor has it that the guy in China with 13 tons of gold was into a Smaulgld podcast when they busted him. Yeah, he was preparing for the gold back yuan game changer. He was lining up all the gold, and he was going to issue petro yawns, and people were going to buy it from him, and he was going to, I don't know what he was going to do with all that gold. DB stupid. The guy in China footage looks so fake. Yeah, somebody else pointed that out. I'm trying to think of who it was. One of the Smaulgld patrons. And by the way, thank you for that. By the way, somebody sent me a small amount of Bitcoin the other day. I missed it in the account, so thank you very much for that. Yeah, he was saying that the gold, and I didn't examine the pictures very closely. He said the gold in the pictures on the shelf, the amount of gold that was there would just collapse that little rinky-dink shelf, so that might have been fake gold. All right. Philip says he also had a stash of Smaulgld Mugs, the real treasure. Yes, indeed. I got the other day, I got one of those, they're supposedly Smaulgld espresso mugs. Let me see if I can find a picture of them. And I ordered 2 of them. I had a credit from the company. And that's the one I never bought myself. What's interesting is it is not an espresso mug. I mean, it tells you what it is. It's actually, quote, a cup of coffee. It's 8 ounces, so it's quite big. And the mugs are, I think they're 11 ounces. You can get them up as high as 15 ounces. But the espresso mug is not a shot glass like an espresso like you might think it is. Let me see if I can find a picture for you. It's a nice mug. And let's see if I can get mug shots. Well, the mug shots are the ones that are the pictures of the mug. Those are fine. Let me show you in a mug shot. There's the Smaulgld espresso mug, but they call it that. It's not an espresso mug. See, mug shot, get it? It's in the lineup. There it is. But that's the mug that I received the other day. I don't have those to sell from Smuggling headquarters, but I do have the classic. There's your classic mug. And I do have the super classic. So these are your mug shots here. There's a super classic mug. But I also have a shot glass mug shot. Where's that? There it is. The Smaulgld mug shot glass. There it is. That's a nice looking shot glass. You can drink your 25% tariffed single malt whiskey in there. Of course, we've got beer steins. Those are really cool. You really can't tell from that's a smaller mug shot. And then we have the frosted beer mugs. That's 20. I think that's 22 ounces. That one. And this one is this one's 16 ounces. That's the frosted mug. I put that in the freezer. Put a little water on it. You get a double frost on it. You get the real frost plus the frost that the mug has. And some people have purchased these for their own little hound dogs. Smaulgld pet bowls. The big pet bowl. Dogs of all size snouts can fit in there. And of course, there is the Smaulgld game-changing travel mug. You can bring Smaulgld to go. I have all of these other than the pet bowl. My dog does not eat out of a Smaulgld, but we do lead the mug life here at Smuggling headquarters. All right. Tricky Guy, back again. Tricky Guy used to be a regular on the Smuggling podcast, but I think Tricky Guy got mad at me because I didn't constantly pump silver set to skyrocket. But you weren't around at the beginning of the year, at the end of last year, Tricky Guy. We had a poll, and they're all different choices. And my pick on silver was the last poll, and it was when I was 1480. I said silver set to skyrocket 2019, price $20 to $22, and that was based on gold getting to 1500 or breaking 1375, getting to 1500, getting to 1600, and I predicted silver to 2022. But I am not a pumper, and it was all based on not the unsustainable gold-silver ratio or some of the other pumper stories, but on the basis that silver has a dormant monetary component that gets ignited when gold takes off. All right, let's see. What else? DB Stupid, you guys are really talking about this Chinese thing. It must have left a big impression on you. Okay. The video footage looked like fake bars, no uniform port bars, not even shaped like bars. In many cases, the rack, there you go. The rack was not able to hold the gold. It was lightweight. So he has watched it a lot. All right, DB Stupid, Tricky Guy. Yeah, I agree. It seems at least possible for a corrupt guy to do this. All right. What else do we have? Tricky Guy. In 1998, I was told by a Taiwan businessman that 10 tons of gold was routinely smuggled into Taiwan a year. Are smuggled metals accounted? No, of course not. They're illegal. I mean, cigarette sales that are sold illegal, you don't count them. They're not. People try to estimate, but you really can't. The amount of gold that's smuggled into India, into other places. You know, when you have tariffs, that's what happens. I mean, people are going to be smuggling in now Scotch whiskey. They're going to be smuggling in all kinds of stuff. I mean, at some point, a tariff at a certain price makes it worth the risk to smuggle. That's like in India. They smuggle in because there's a 10% duty or 12.5% duty now. So they'll try to smuggle the gold in. I mean, it's 12% profit. In fact, you can even sell the gold at a slightly lower price and still make money. You're just taking the risk. You're going to get arrested. All right. Fiona says, yes, she's from New York indeed. All right. Tricky Guy. When Clinton was impeached in December 1998, gold went down $10, silver up. Ratio was 55 to 1. Yeah, and that's about what the ratio should be. This 16 to 1 and 1 to 1 stuff, there's no basis for it. It was 16 to 1. I don't want to repeat all this. I've covered this so many times, done videos on it. When the ratio was 16 to 1, it was set by the government for the purpose of a bimetallic standard. And they had to keep those prices where they were. It wasn't because the natural ratio. This is BS. There's no such thing as anything being valued solely on the basis of relative rarity. I mean, you just look at platinum and gold. Platinum is 10 times more scarce than gold. Gold is more expensive. I've used my paintings versus Picasso. He's done thousands of paintings. I've done 2. His are worth more. The fact that there's a certain amount of silver versus a certain amount of gold is largely irrelevant. It's only relevant when they're both used for precisely the same thing, and they're not. If they're both money, which they're not, I don't care what anyone says, silver does not have the same monetary components right now as gold, and gold has lost a lot of its monetary components. It's only when they were both money and both circulated as money or both considered money that that ratio was relevant, and even then, it was fixed by governments. So the idea that it should be 16-1 because historically, then you don't understand your history. You just listen to silver pumpers who probably don't understand their history either and just want to believe that because they're selling silver. All right, Mint Mark asking for advice here from any of those stackers out there. At what point are we to buy more now or wait for lower prices? What do you do? I don't know. Tricky guy. Lou, do you still think buying premium liquor is good? Should the fan hedge? Yeah. I mean, if you live around people who drink, and many people do, or you drink yourself. The problem with, if you buy it, and then you should never buy anything as a barter item that you're going to consume in copious amounts. So if you love your cognac or your whiskey, I don't think you want to buy that unless you can forbear using it. But I do think that it is a good barter item. I think the ideal barter item is what somebody sent me the other day. Where are they? Oh no, did I lose them? Was the silver dimes. Because not only do you have silver and you have a barter item, you're not paying for a premium for such a small item. 10 cents, it's recognizable, it's exactly the same as a dime looks today, except that it's silver, and you don't pay small coin fabrication charge. So yes, I do think liquor is a good hedge. There's a lot of good hedges. I mentioned we did a whole show on it too. It wasn't really for hedges, it was for what are other places you can keep cash other than a bank. One of my favorites is Forever Stamps. If you're going to use stamps, you might as well buy them now. Gift cards at places that you are going to frequent. Amazon, I don't know if you go to Olive Garden or Baskin Robbins, any of those places that don't charge you for the card and they don't expire, there's no fee then. Why put the money in the bank if you're going to only take it out and go to Baskin Robbins with it? Or you're going to take it out and spend it at Amazon? All right. I make espresso using the regular Smaulgld mugs. All right. Joshua, you can put espresso in a mug. That is true. Tricky guy. Emergency alert. Lou has not yet done a Bernie impressions. The marker tremble and pause. Well, that's because I have to be paid. Because I realize the only way that anyone can make any money in this country is if you get paid. And the reason is, it kind of contradicts what I've said, that everything should be free. But when I wrote my book, if I had given that book away for free, I would not today be a millionaire. All right. Whereas Barry says he likes it when Mario printed the money. Well, that's because the monetary and fiscal policy need to be coordinated because all the central bank can do is print the money. If we don't have the fiscal policy working to hand out the money in the helicopters, then we, as the Central Bank of Europe, have to print the money. Print the money. The 1%. Tricky guy, Sal. Always track your stuff. Always. You just can't always participate with your love, your mind. All right. Who's Sal? Salivate Metal? Salivate Metal. Welcome, everybody. Dormant monetary component. All right. Ah, Sal, I meant Lou. Yeah. Well, I know Tricky Guy because Salivate Metal is awesome too. And it's amazing how he's able to keep that voice throughout an entire show. A multitude of gratitude. All right. Diwali smuggling seizing India's huge black mark. That is correct. Tricky Guy, where are smugglers getting their gold? Isn't it accounted at the supply source? How much gold is being mined and never seen coming to market? Well, that's very hard to track. I mean, you're talking about 2,600 tons a year. I mean, is it all accounted for? See, this is the thing. It's even more complicated for silver. Silver is being mined as a byproduct. Many of the large mining entities will not even show you a line item for silver because according to SEC rules, if they're a public company, they only have to report stuff that's material. So if they make a few $1,000,000 on selling silver as a secondary, they don't even account. They may account for it internally, but they don't produce the number, so you don't know how much it is. Now, what gold gets smuggled? Probably not gold that's coming from a mine. Remember, Tricky Guy, that gold especially has a secondary market that's huge, and so they can just buy it from the secondary market, not newly mined gold, and then bring it into India. All right. What else do we have? All right, Josh, thanks for getting him to do the impressions. Yeah, usually I got to be paid for those, but I do want to thank everyone for joining me tonight. And tomorrow is Thursday, so I guess we're going to go back to the regular program, which is never normal. So we'll see what we have tomorrow. If anyone's got any questions or comments or interested in any particular topics being covered, let me know. Otherwise, we're just going to carry on covering the economy and the gold and silver and crypto markets. We didn't mention the crypto today. I don't think much happened. Crypto goes through periods of a lot of attention, and it goes up, it goes down. Right now, it's in somewhat of a dormant period because Bakkt came out and it was a dud. That was the big driver catalyst that was going to bring in the institutions, and so far the trading there is muted. But right now the Litecoin is at 56. I think Bitcoin is about 8,300. Let's see what it is right now. 8,350. Both of those had fallen off significantly last week, but they seem to be stabilizing. The thing about the crypto, you just never know when the thing is just going to fall off the table or spurt higher. And that's just been the case the last few years. And I don't think anyone knows. And when people make these predictions, I mean, gold and silver, you can kind of predict. You can guess anything. But cryptos, you either get people that are just absolute fanatics and make these, predictions, $1 million by 2020, and then others saying it's going to zero. Well, the answer is somewhere in between, I'm sure. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much indeed. And remember to lead the mug life. Anyone want to hear a Muggin' for Life? I'll leave you with Muggin' for Life, another original song or another composition by the guy who writes all of our songs and music, the intro music, Mark Battaglia, who's had an illustrious career as a composer for movies. Let's play Muggin' for Life. Here we go. Remember to purchase your Smaulgld Mugs.
Yeah, mug life, baby. Mug life, baby. Yeah, we rockin' the booth. We mugging for life. We mugging for truth. Smaulgld here, and he's spitting the facts about the pumper community and the way that they act. We mugging for life. We ain't playing the games. We all know the lies and we all know the names. Come on. Mugging for life. Mugging for life. Smaulgld.
There it is. I'll leave up the Smaulgld patron and subscribe star and the address to send donations and places to buy mugs up for a couple of seconds, and then we'll see you tomorrow night. Bernie, you want to do the countdown?
Yeah, of course, because if I don't get paid for this, then...
Bernie, countdown.
Okay, so 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1%, 0. Have a good night.